Get started here. So this topic, actually, when I was on vacation a few weeks ago, driving to Florida, as you know, drive to Florida from Ohio is about 13 hours, so you have a lot of time to kill. So I had this book in my reading list for a while, and I just went ahead and read it on the way. I don't know, the way there, way back, I can't remember. But anyway, I thought it was a good little book, and I thought this would make a good topic to discuss. So yeah, this book, the material is really heavily, most of it, I should say, not everything, but a lot of it's adapted from this book by Sam Allberry. You can probably find him online, any lectures he's done or podcasts or anything, but this is the book. He's written a few other books too. I think he's written a book on transgenderism too. But what God has to say about our bodies. So he's English. I think he lives in England. So anyway, it's a good little book. It's not too long. I think it's like 160 pages maybe. So if you want to get this book. If you want to read more about this, it's a good book. I'm promoting his book as I always do. Promote everybody's books. So anyway, so it's funny when he wrote this book, he said here at the beginning of the book, it was funny. He said that when the word spiritual comes up, he noticed that most Christians generally, or just people in general, think you're talking about something non-physical. So when he said he's writing a book called What God Has to Say About Our Bodies, people were like, does that mean like the church? They say, like, do you mean like the church, how it is like a body, the body of Christ, the church? And so, he had to kind of explain that many times, of course. So anyway, but there's no doubt the scripture does say a lot about our bodies. Our bodies are meaningful. Much of the discipleship in the Bible, especially in the New Testament, spoken of in bodily terms, and the body plays a large role, of course, in our redemption and in everything we do. So it does certainly have a role to play in biblical theology. And I think I told you about this when we did the transgenderism topic a ways back. I think it was like a couple months ago. I said that, when Nancy Pearcey wrote this book, Love Thy Body, she's noticing that most of the problems we're having in our culture, especially transgenderism, people are detaching the body from the rest of your being. Like, if your psychology, if they're teaching your gender is determined by your psychology and what your mind says, detached from your body or how you feel, detached from what you are physically, then obviously they're not taking the body into consideration, right? Something is overriding the body. And of course, you've had, as I said before, when I did transgenderism, you have all these actors or actresses or other people who have had reassignment surgery. They've gone from being a woman to, transitioning into a boy or man, whatever. We know about the swimmer, probably Leah Thomas. So of course, there's many others. I'm just giving a couple. So there's a lot of problems out there because what's happening is the culture is saying that your psychology and how you feel is really the determining factor in your sexual identity or your gender, right? So they say, let your body be conformed to what you're feeling or what your mind's telling you, right? Whereas the Bible teaches that obviously your body is the determining factor in your sexual identity. You let your mind be conformed to your body, and actually there's not any kind of dichotomy. They both are supposed to fit nice and snug together. So we're making all these dualisms, making these things supposedly opposing things, and pitting them against each other in our culture, and it's leading to all kinds of problems. So if we just keep it together holistically, we'd have a lot more. The confusion would end. We have a lot more clarity. But remember, though, that when the Messiah came, Jesus took on human flesh. He had a body. I mean, God decided to use a human body to incarnate himself, right? In the person of Jesus. Jesus became a Jewish man, and in the Second Temple Jewish period, he showed up at a specific time and place, and he obviously got the redemptive work he did through his body. That is what the primary one of the primary teachings of the incarnation is that God um, came to dwell among us, right, in a human body. God dwelled among us in the person of Jesus. And Jesus, of course, with his body, of course, he is both the temple. His body becomes the temple in person, right? When they came to him and they wanted to stone him, they were mad at him because he said, I have the authority to forgive sins. He said, your sins are forgiven. You don't need to go in the temple now. I am the temple. My body, I am the temple in person. The temple's here in front of you. And, that this, who I am, as being the temple, I atone for sin now. You don't need to go into a physical temple. And I don't know if you've noticed that there are passages in scripture that talk about Jesus, what he did. They have this emphasis on his body. It says, 1 Peter 2:24, he himself bore our sins in his body on the tree. Hebrews 10:10, and by that we have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus once and for all. Colossians 1:22, now he has reconciled you by Christ's physical body through death. See, we don't necessarily think of it that way. We think of it like his blood. It's the blood, right? Which, of course, is talked about. I'm not saying it's not there, but sometimes we don't put that together. We kind of just skip over these passages. Proof text, by the way. That means you have to look at the full context of the passages. But it's interesting these authors mention the body of Jesus, So I don't know. That's something to think about, when you're thinking about Jesus's atonement, what he did for us. Think of, like these passages right here. No doubt about it. Now, also, when Jesus is raised from the dead, he's raised in a physical body. He's raised in the same physical body he was crucified in. Yet it's a transformed body because obviously, he's different, but it still has continuity with his crucified body. That's why Thomas could touch his wounds, right? He could still see the crucifixion scars and the marks, and he wanted to touch him and see it. So it's interesting, God didn't raise Jesus as as like just a spirit. There's passages where Jesus says in Luke 24:39, they come to him and he says, his resurrection body has flesh and bones. He says, I'm not a ghost. Obviously, he talks about, he says, they touch him, it's real flesh and bones. In Acts 2:31, Peter says he was raised in the flesh. So there's a lot of emphasis on physicality in the Bible, and at least in the life of Jesus, everything he accomplished for us. The incarnation is done in a body. The atonement, he becomes the temple in person through his body. He bore our sins through his body. There's emphasis on Jesus's body in certain passages. And of course, his resurrection is done bodily, which is a prototype of our own resurrection one day. We will be raised bodily. He's not just like a ghost floating around. Now, as I've said before, we need to remember that, we don't believe that, not that this whole teaching is on resurrection tonight, but, resurrection is not immortality of the soul. That's not what we believe resurrection is. Like, we don't see the body as like a prison house of the soul. Like, the body's bad and it's corrupt and it's evil and it holds my soul, and my body's got to be done away with, and I need to shed this body. Biblically, you're incomplete without your body. That's what resurrection does. It makes you complete one day when you are redeemed, given a resurrection body. So you can obviously depart from your body when in the intermediate state, when you die, when you're temporarily with God for whatever amount of time that is, but you're still not complete. You'll only be totally, it doesn't mean you're in a bad place. I'm just saying that we will not be fully complete till later on when we're given our resurrected body. Of course, we're in the new heavens, new earth. So biblically, the material world is good. God created the world. He said it was good. The body is not evil. Obviously, God created the body for a certain purpose. So it's not necessarily, we're saying, we talk about people saving one's soul. As I've talked to, of course, the soul is you. Biblically, the soul is all of you. Like if I say, you poor soul, or Eric is a kind soul, or or so and so is a mean soul. I mean, we're talking about them, right? It's all of you. But it is true that biblically there seems to be a case that we can be temporarily disembodied, that we can be apart from our physical body and be with God. And then eventually one day we'll be reunited back with our bodies of the resurrection body. Okay, that's what Paul teaches in 1 Corinthians 15 and other places. Now, also we need to understand that we have been battling a heresy for a long time. It was around in a little later than the apostles, but still, it was still lingering around, I would say, and that was the issue of Gnosticism. This threatened the early church early on, that the Gnostics believed that Jesus was this transmitter of esoteric knowledge, that you had to be the insider to get this special knowledge from Jesus. And they believed that actually the material world was evil and the spirit is what is good. So they didn't have a high view of the body because they believed the spiritual esoteric realm was what really matters, okay? And Jesus was the transmitter of the secret knowledge that you could be part of. You could become part of the Gnostic circle if you were to receive this esoteric knowledge from Jesus, the teacher. And so obviously they believing that since they had a low view of the body, they of course believe Jesus's body, they believe the incarnation was wrong as far as like believing that Jesus would accomplish his redemptive work through a body. They believed that Jesus's physical body wasn't real, but it only seemed to be physical. Okay. What really was matter was Jesus's spirit. Okay. And so they really rejected the incarnation. Now, if you read the book of Colossians, you will see that Paul is really emphasizing the body of Jesus in a lot of passages. He's talking about what God has done through the body of Jesus. So he's really defending that, or speaking against any kind of Gnosticism. Now, there's some debate what the exact background of Colossians is, whether it's like only a Gnostic heresy with some Jewish mysticism or a combination of things. But the point is that that Paul, you'll see there, just read through Colossians, read all those passages, you'll see how Paul keeps defending Jesus's work through his body, what he's done physically through his body. It's kind of interesting. Now, C.S. Lewis had an interesting quote when he wrote Mere Christianity. He says, Christianity is almost the only one of the great religions who thoroughly approves of the body, which believes that matter is good. That God himself only once took on a human body, and that some kind of body is going to be given to us even in heaven. It's going to be an essential part of our happiness, our beauty, our energy. So I would agree with Lewis. I don't necessarily know if I agree that we have a body in heaven at that point. Some people believe you get a temporary body. I don't know if I believe that, but that's a quibble, something I don't need to quibble over, or we need to debate all night. The point is that God definitely approves. The body is there's a high view of the body in Christianity, no doubt about it. Now, biblically, there's a lot of integration between the material and the spiritual. One isn't necessarily placed over the other. We know that, when Adam and Eve sinned, it not only impacted them spiritually, but had physical consequences as well. They died. First of all, physical death entered the world, right? That people die physically now. And they died in the earth from which the body was formed was cursed. We know the earth got cursed. The physical realm was cursed through their sin. So, and of course, we do die spiritually now. Of course, if we believe in the Messiah, we are born again spiritually. But the point is that you see that the principle of dust to dust holds true. The final disposition of the body by the principle of dust to dust, right? The body is folded as a tent, returns the earth from which it came. So it's an interesting, relationship between the physical or the material and the spiritual in the Bible. There's really an integration between the two. I'll talk about that a little more as we move on here. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the book by Philip Yancey called Fearfully and Wonderfully Made. He redid this book. There's an updated version of it. I think I had the older version. I don't think I have the newer version. But anyway, we're probably not used to thinking so much as our body is a gift from God, and I'll explain more why in a moment. But the passage, there's that proof text in Psalm 139, 13 to 14, that you formed me my inward parts, you knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. So, God discusses with David here, it's not just the inside, it's the outside, right? It's everything is fearfully and wonderfully made. But I think for a lot of us, we probably maybe have read that passage and we say to ourselves, well, I don't feel fearfully and wonderfully made because, I've had some problems with my body. I'll talk more about that in a second. But just remember that, if we're strictly the product of an accidental process that God didn't create us, then of course our bodies have no real major significance. They're just, it's about survival of the fittest, right? You try to keep this body, as long as you can. Of course, we do that as well as Christians, but until we pass away. But, our sense of self, if there's no body involved, the other contrast is, of course, if we are created, we're not just some arbitrary lump of matter, right? It means something. Our bodies have significance, right? In what we do and the way we view everything else, right? Because God's created us. But I think probably for a lot of us, or some of us, I don't know all of you, but I've certainly met my share of people over the years that we've had problems with our body. We know problems that have had problems. We know people have had problems with their body. We know people that do have problems with their bodies right now. Their bodies are causing a lot of pain to them. So it's hard to get motivated to give thanks, to go back here. It's hard for you to go back and to say to God, thank you for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, the way you knitted me in my mother's womb. It's kind of hard when we have struggled with certain aspects of our own body and we see other people struggling where, we've seen horrific suffering, whether it be a disease, psychological illness, or whatever it is. There's all kinds of ailments, but I'd be willing to bet a lot of us are saying some of us have said to God, why did you make me this way? Or why did this person turn out that way? Or, am I really fearfully and wonderfully made? I mean, don't feel fearfully and wonderfully made considering what I've been through. So I understand that. But I think biblically, we need to understand that bodily life still is a gift from God. Whether understand how difficult it may be, we still would need to view that in some capacity. Okay. I understand that some of us maybe have seen other people, ourselves, our bodies have caused us so many problems. We just give up, like, just take me, Lord. Like, I'm tired of this body. Right. And maybe, of course, he's done that. And I understand the sentiment, of course. But we'll talk about that more in a minute. One thing we do need to realize is that being embodied definitely has shown that we are designed to relate to one another physically. Okay, we need physical contact with people. And of course, the internet and technology has made it so in some cases we don't need to see people physically. We can just do everything through phone and texting and everything else. But you guys know, if you hadn't noticed, during COVID, that destroyed a lot of people's lives. The isolation just showed, the isolationism showed that people can't survive that way. It's absolutely destructive. So we thrive off physical contact, right? And being in relationships. So have you ever noticed some of these passages in the New Testament where Paul or other writers talk about how eager they are to see the other apostles or other disciples? Like in 2 John 12, it says, though I have much more to write to you, I'd rather not to use paper and ink. Instead, I hope to come to you and talk face to face with you so that our joy may be complete. Romans 1:11, Paul says, I long to see you that I may impart some spiritual gift to strengthen you. And he says to Timothy, my dear son, grace, mercy, and peace from me, God, or from God the Father, Christ Jesus, our Lord. I thank God in my service, my forefathers did with a clear conscience, as night and day. I constantly remember you, my prayers are calling you tears. I long to see you. So it may be filled, that may be filled with joy. Paul says that a lot in his writings. There's something different about seeing someone in person. There's something also different about sharing a meal with somebody, right? I know I had a friend of mine, he loved to go to eat. He just, not that the food, he just loved sharing meals with people. And because it was a time of rich fellowship, it was intimate. And there is something that transpires when we, of course, have physical contact with people. Obviously, it's how we build relationships. That's how we thrive in our relationships. Being isolated, staying in your house, and never having any kind of contact with anybody will probably kill you, right? It's just very, very hard on you because God didn't design you that way. So I understand the need to get away sometimes and be alone. I understand that. But anyway, I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. Okay. Now, uh, also, how about this? Did you know there's a thing called a cuddle service you can get? This shows you where people are at who need physical touch. That you can find a cuddle buddy. Did you know you can go online and find this? You can sign up. Yeah, you can do that. Go to this website right here. Start cuddling today. I don't know how it works. I don't know if you like go meet somebody and then they just hug you for like 10 minutes and you tell them how long you want to go, or 5 minutes, and then you say thank you and then you walk away. I don't know. I'm not making fun of it. I just think it's just it really is telling that we have a cuddling service today. So it shows you where people are at as far as needing physical touch, right? Okay. Now, some people might believe that the body is not that significant. There's some people out there might say that, the real me is my soul or spirit, and the body's simply a lump of matter, that it's like the outer casing of what I really am. They kind of prioritize the soul over the body. Some people are like that. But they kind of tend to see the body as like, they can do whatever they want with it. It's not really that significant. They can shape it, mold it, paint it, adorn it, whatever they want to do. The real thing that's immutable or can't be changed is the real them, which is the soul. Okay. Some people believe that. I mean, that's not the biblical view, obviously, but other people may believe that. And then you have, of course, the those that think the body is, of course, very significant, whereas much of our identity is based on what our body looks like, and that we base our we're having success with our body if we meet the cultural expectations of what a body should look like. And we all know that the culture plays a huge role in how we're perceived and how we perceive others and how the body should look. Hollywood has done that. Everything's done that. Social media has done. I'll talk more about that in a second. So, and then some people may just believe that, of course, that, all that matters is the physical. The soul is irrelevant. That all that matters are physical things. So their whole emphasis is on the physical self and how we look, and, looking the best, and obviously, doing everything they can to prolong their looks until the day they die. Of course, that's why you see people getting plastic surgery and doing things to their body later on in life, trying to look young, trying to stay and look young. They don't like age is a huge issue in our culture. We judge people by ageism. How old are you? How old are you? How old are you? We place a huge emphasis on age. We just sometimes can't age gracefully. We have to always try to, we have to be young. Young is the idol of our day. So not in everybody, but certainly it's out there. So there's no doubt that the culture obviously shapes the context in which body image is formed a lot of times, right? And of course, culture changes. There's many studies that show that many culturally determined factors contribute to body image, as I said, such as media, peer pressure, peer influence, and family socialization. So I know that I grew up with families. I grew up around all kinds of different families. I knew families that placed a huge emphasis on looking a certain way, and some of their kids turned out being bulimic or anorexic. I know other families that didn't care and let their kids go, and whatever. I mean, they didn't care. But so certainly culture plays a huge role, though. I think that this is an interesting statistic. It says in this article here, for people of all ages, social media can cause individuals to have a negative body image and even eating disorders. According to a study by Florida House Experience Health, 87% of women, 60% of men compare themselves to others on social media. Of course, You've had all these articles on the negative impact of social media on body image. When you're on TikTok, by the way, and I'm not on TikTok, but I have looked at it. It's just someone's image is like right in front of you, like boom, like a body. It's just boom. It's so in your face. And other, certainly can happen on other social media apps, but a lot of it is just so much stimulation, someone's body right in front of you 24 hours a day. So, it's definitely causing, it's causing some, it's having a negative impact on a lot of people, taking their cues from social media. It's probably not going away either. Now, I think that we know, though, that, if you want to view yourself like the body isn't really that important, the soul's what matters, that's the real me. I think deep down that your body is an essential part of who you are. And I think most humans do know that, because when people hurt each other or you've been violated, whatever you do to someone's body, you do to a person, right? So, you've been violated when someone hurts you physically, right? You don't say, if someone's raped, they don't say, oh, my soul is, you don't immediately jump to your soul. I mean, you could say, yeah, my soul is damaged. That just means you're damaged, right? But your body's been violated, and your body is you. What you do to a body, you do to a person. So you can't escape it. Okay. And so, we don't want to just, we want to remember that we do know the importance of the role the body plays in our lives. Okay. Of course, the body is not everything, right? I mean, your body is you, but neither is it everything. It's not the totality of who you are. We know that a body without God's life in it is only a corpse, right? We know that when Adam was formed, God had not breathed into him his ruach, his spirit, right? And Adam had not come alive yet, right? And so God breathed his spirit into Adam, and Adam became an animated body. Now he was a soul body unit, right? But there's no life apart from God's breath. That's why I think that, physically when we die, if you've ever seen someone, I have seen my father-in-law when he passed away, I was right there when it happened. I could tell something had changed about him, that he looked like he was not very animated, of course, but I could tell, I could just see, when it says in the Bible, the body without the spirit is dead. It's true. When we die, we're physically dead, but of course we're either with the Lord or we're not. So now, what about that passage in 1 Samuel we like to quote, the one that do not look upon his appearance or in the height of his stature, because I've rejected him, for the Lord sees not as a man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. Well, there's some truth to that it's a proof text people use, that God doesn't look at outward appearance when he's looking for servants. He's looking for people he wants to use to serve him. He looks at the heart. That's true. Of course, the heart is the totality of who you are. We tend as humans obviously look at outward appearance first. First thing we see is an outward appearance of somebody. We see their body, see their physical appearance, right? And we know that first impressions start, right? Well, that's why people say always look your best, because you only have one chance to give a first impression. So if you show up for your interview and you look like you took no care in how you look, it's obviously going to make an impression on your potential employer. So sometimes it does matter, outwardly, of how we look in certain instances, right? When we're, trying to be professional or trying to present ourselves to others. But it is true that we tend to size people up sometimes. We assess how they look and then make a determination about them primarily on that basis. And it is true, God does not just see how we appear outwardly. He sees the inside and the out, right? He definitely sees our intentions of our heart, and he knows. So there's some truth to that passage to be used, but as I said, you don't want to use it as like a proof text to say it never matters how I look. I mean, I know if I'm going to go if I ever been on an interview in my life, I have to look my best, right? I actually have to present myself well, and you guys there's certain situations where you have to do that as well. Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about our favorite topic, sexual sin. which is probably the most serious sin in the Bible, to be honest. All sexual sin, by the way, not just sex before marriage, not fornication, not just fornication. It's pornography, it's homosexuality, it's all kinds of sexual sin. Okay, but when people say in our culture that they just say sex is just physical, it doesn't mean anything. That's false, because sex is so much more than anything physical. It involves the whole person, and there's an exchange taking place emotionally, physically, spiritually. It's involving your whole being. Okay. And we know that when we read 1 Corinthians, that Paul is dealing with a background here. He's dealing with a mindset that the Corinthians thought it really didn't matter who they had sex with, right? Because they didn't have a high view of the body. And of course, they were having sex with prostitutes. And that was obviously very bad. They didn't see the spiritual relationship between their bodies and, the spiritual significance of their bodies. They were just, they didn't have the right view of it. And, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 6:18, he says, flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body. And that's why that's why sexual sin is so much more serious, because it's a sin against your own body. So when you sin against your own body, it's a sin against the whole person. And it's a sin against the whole person because God has designed sex to involve the whole person, right? So sex is the way we give ourselves fully to someone else, right? It never is just a physical act. It's profoundly personal, right? So when you sexually sin, you're really violating your whole self, the whole being, okay? So, and I would say, people try to say, well, homosexuality is no greater sin than anything else. They're all sins. Well, I understand what they're saying, but actually, biblically, if you study from Genesis to Revelation, actually sexual sin is given a heavier judgment. In all honesty, it really is. Biblically, if you go all the way from Genesis to Revelation. If you look at Romans 1, I've talked about it, when Paul talks about the homosexuality there, men, turning to men, women turning to women, and then God gives them over to it's idolatry, and God just turns them over to it, right? There's a depraved mind. God just says, okay, if that's what you want, you get it. Now you're judged. So it's a very serious issue. As I repeat, sexual sin is unlike other sins in that it unites the body wholesale to someone else. It involves the forming of one body union, whether or not we intend it. It does something to and with the body is not the case with other sins. Okay? And we know the passage in 1 Corinthians 6:19-20 that God chooses, so it's mind-blowing, the same Holy Spirit, the same Spirit that indwelled the temple, when the Jewish people go into the temple to make an offering or a sacrifice, that in the Holy of Holies, the tabernacle, the temple, the same Spirit that indwelled that area, the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead, the same Spirit that Jesus promised that was coming. Of course, he decides to take residence in our lives. He lives in our bodies. He comes in, dwell us. I don't know where he is. He's like in my upper shoulder, or it's my cheek, or up here. I don't know, because the Bible doesn't tell us. But he's in us. Okay? And the point is that we're not our own anymore, and we've been bought with a price. We've been bought with the body of Jesus. So this is a very, very harsh statement, or a hard teaching, but technically we don't own our bodies anymore. We don't even have the right to say, this is you already know what the culture is saying. It's my body, my choice. No, you don't own your body. Your body does not belong to you. It belongs to God. Okay? And now an unbeliever doesn't have that perspective at all, so we can't hold them to that standard because they're ignorant. But for a believer, we need to understand that God definitely has taken ownership of our bodies. Okay? Now, it is true that also our bodies break down. as I talked about, that I think you know good and well that we get sick. And of course, sometimes we stay sick. I know other people here on the call have encountered suffering. They've seen suffering. I don't want to make light of that. Our bodies break down and deform. They age and decay. They degenerate, right? And at some point, we all die. And we all know that. And by the way, trying to, as Clay Jones talked about in his book, Immortality, you know, people try to find these symbolic immortalities because they just want to live forever and ever. And to be honest, I think most people, we've done everything we can to try to prolong life. We're still trying. I think people would live to be 150 if they could, because most people are petrified of dying. But the point is that, not to make light of dying, I know. But the point is that Genesis, that's where the fall happened. And that's why there's a disruption in the natural world. The creation is off. And we know that the body is off now. Our own bodies are not what they should be. And we break down and we die. That's just, we're living in a fallen world, you know, that there's other passages where, of course, we know in the New Testament that there's plenty of examples of people who suffered. You know, they were sick and they suffered. Timothy experienced ailments in his stomach. You know, Paul doesn't actually tell him to ask God to deliver him from this sickness. He actually tells him to go use wine for the sake of your stomach. 1 Timothy 5:23. How about that? So go buy some wine tonight. Actually, I no longer drink wine because I found out I'm allergic to it. So how about that? I used to have one glass every once in a while. I'm allergic to the sulfates in it. So that's exciting. But anyway, God is definitely able to heal, but he doesn't always heal. He can do it, but as we know, he doesn't always do it. There's times when cures are developed for certain sicknesses. It's not always the case. But in this life right now, we are the subject of this passage of Romans 8. We are part of this. You know, when Paul says, I consider that our present suffering is not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us, for the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be, this creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed, for the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and the glory of the children of God. We know the whole creation has been groaning, as in the pains of childbirth, right up to the present time. Not only so, but we ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we are saved, but hope that is seen and no hope at all. What hope so we already have. So we live in a created world that is longing to be renewed. The creation longs to be renewed, and it will be renewed one day. And our bodies long to be renewed through a resurrected body. So now, just remember one thing that, a couple more things. You know, when we disparage other people the way they are physically, I think we know we live in a culture that tends to do that. We sometimes judge people outwardly and make fun of them. I think we've all done that at some stage of our lives. Maybe some cruel jokes or comment. We just need to remember that, you know, this person was made, I talked about this before, this person's an image bearer of God, of course, but we tend to insult, you know, God in a way, because this is the person God has created the way they've been created. So when we try to judge someone as being substandard, you know, we end up insulting God, to be honest. That's pretty convicting, I know, but something we need to think about as we go along. Listen, I know cruel jokes are out there. I know jokes are out there everywhere. I know we make fun of how people look. That's just the society we live in. But we know as believers, we need to be careful about that. Okay, I know we all do. Okay, me included. So we need to remember that, as I said, the body is for the Lord. Our body is not our own personal playground. It belongs to the Lord, and it should be oriented towards him. And you know, just because God is spirit, it doesn't mean he's not interested in our physicality, right? He's the one that made us physical. And yes, our body may be physical or may be fallen, but that doesn't mean God regrets making it or he's changed his position on it. He's still pro physical things and still pro matter, okay? He's not a Gnostic, doesn't have a Gnostic view, of course. God's not against matter. Okay. Now, what about the issue of exercise and sleep, which we all think about every day, right? Yes, it's true that God gave us these bodies to take care of, and we're supposed to be stewards of our bodies. And it is true that physical exercise has a role to play. It certainly is helpful in our body, the way our bodies operate. We probably know some of us exercise different ways. Maybe don't exercise at all. I don't know. But obviously, we also can make exercise into the ultimate. It can be idolized, where it just becomes obsessive, right? And we need to have a balanced view of that, of obviously, exercise and taking care of our bodies. Now, as far as sleep, it's easy to think sometimes that sleep is unspiritual because, we're used to a culture that always places a high emphasis on doing all the time and being productive, right? And, but, the Bible does commend of resting well. And obviously, I think we probably know if you try to do too much in one day and try to wake up early and go to bed late and try to be more productive, it ends up, in many cases, backfiring. I know a brother of mine, that could say to me, I work day and night on this. I work day and night. I'm like, why? I'm like, why do you work day and night? How's that help? What does that prove? Are you trying to prove your work to God? Are you trying to show how important you are? Are you trying to show how productive you are? Are you trying to show you matter so much? It doesn't help. So obviously a lot of times we push ourselves beyond our limits and we do it in vain. And we end up getting a lot less done, when we don't take care of ourselves. Now, sorry. By the way, I just had that in here. I want to show the picture. You guys remember this record, right? Olivia Newton-John, even though she's not in this picture. But that's what I wear when I work out, right there. But it is true that if you don't get enough sleep, obviously it can dull your senses and your awareness. It makes you less spiritually sensitive. It makes it harder to resist temptation when you're not rested well. And it is true, of course, the contrary view is that too much sleep can lead to laziness, right? So I'm not condoning like just sleeping all day and sleeping around, sleeping in until 11 a.m. every day, but most of us can't do that anyway. We probably know the Proverbs passage in 24:30-34 about the sluggard there. His land is that means of income. And then it talks about, the warnings there. It talks about, of course, how neglecting it will lead to greater poverty. When he should be out doing things, he's being lazy. So obviously the Bible does not condone laziness at all, but we need to have that balanced view of sleep and rest and, of course, exercise. Okay. Now, the passage that we probably all like to quote is a good one, Romans 12:1, the proof text. You have to read in context, but I don't have time to read the entire chapter, Romans 12. When Paul says, I appeal to you, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. I think that, as I said before, now that God owns our bodies, we offer ourselves to him. We offer our bodies to him, right? We don't offer our bodies to God so he might love us. We offer our bodies because he's already loved us first and what Jesus has done for us. So, of course, Paul's really, we're talking about offering God our bodies. We're talking about all of life. We're offering our lives to God, right? And he talks, of course, the next few chapters unpack what this means. But obviously, offering ourselves to God isn't just physical, but certainly we offer ourselves as an act of spiritual worship, right? And the word spiritual carries a sense of being reasonable. It's a reasonable thing to do, okay? So the body is just to offer ourselves, at all of us. I think in my body, I try to get up every day. I try to offer my ears, my eyes, body, everything to God. I try to. And that kind of goes in with Romans 6:13 about do not present your members to sin as instruments for unrighteousness, but present yourselves to God as those who have been bought from death to life, and your members to God as instruments of righteousness. So we're supposed to try not to let sin reign in our body. Of course, it once did before we came to faith in the Messiah. But we've had a transfer of ownership where our members of our body are now to be presented to the Lord. They're not presented to be part of some unrighteous agenda, right? So we're supposed to present the members of our body, present our hands to God, our ears to God, our eyes to God, our, you know, everything, our mouths, everything, or say what we say, our lips, our tongue, everything over to instruments of righteousness. That's the goal. We don't always do that, but that would be the goal, right? You notice how Paul says here in Romans 3, you talk about sin reigning in your mortal body. You notice how Paul says in Romans 3, all these parts of, he's quoting out of the Psalms, how he quote, look how many parts of the body are used here in Romans 3. Their throat is an open grave. They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of asps is upon their lips. Their mouth is full of curses and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. In their paths are ruin and misery. In the way of peace they have none. There's no fear of God before their eyes. So look at all the parts of the body that Paul says are being used as members of unrighteousness, right? That's a good example when he quotes that in Romans 3. And then, of course, finally, we will eventually get a resurrected body. And when Paul talks about the contrast here in 1 Corinthians 15, 42 to 44, it's really uplifting and encouraging. He says here, what is sown is imperishable, what is raised is imperishable. What is sown in dishonor, it's raised in glory. What is sown in weakness, it's raised in power. What is sown in a natural body, it's raised a spiritual body. If there's a natural body, there's also a spiritual body. So, Paul knows that as we age and decay, our bodies will get weak, right? And then we die. But the new body, the resurrected body, will have no lack of power, undiminishing power, will be fully animated by the Holy Spirit. We'll be gloriously fitted to fit the new creation. It'll be a perfect body. There'll be no more temptations. We won't break down and die. We won't have physical weaknesses, no more shame and affliction, no more sin. And we, no more sin, no more death. Obviously, that's the joy of the resurrected body. So, we can look forward to that. And there will be continuity with our resurrected bodies and who we are. We will be us. It's not like, I'm not Eric anymore. I don't know what that looks like if I get a new head of hair or what. But the point is that you get a new facelift or whatever you're looking forward to. I don't know. But the point is that we will be where we need to be, and we will not lack anything. So we can look forward to that. Okay. And then remember, just as I emphasized before, that, Jesus was not, he wasn't resuscitated. He wasn't like Lazarus where he went back to die again after he was raised up. Lazarus was resurrected, but then he died again. Jesus was not reincarnated, and he certainly wasn't just translated into heaven like Enoch got taken up into heaven. And, his soul, Jesus's soul is not what escaped the immaterial realm. He was resurrected physically, and then he went to be with God. Everything about him went up to be with God at the ascension, right? And Jesus, because he's the first fruits of those who are to come, right? He was the first one resurrected. We will be transformed with the resurrected body as well in the new heavens and the new earth. And that is really cool. So let me wrap this up about tattoos. Not that I really wanted to talk about this like it's a pressing issue, but I figured I would mention something about it. Since I see tattoos everywhere, every day, all over the place, they're everywhere. Does the Bible really talk about tattoos? Well, you have the Leviticus 19:28 text. Do not cut your bodies for the dead or put tattoos on yourselves. I am the Lord. Of course, you have to translate that. But, that some people point to that text and, they say case closed, tattoos are off limits. But did you ever read the verse before that in Leviticus 19:27? It says, do not cut the hair at the sides of your head or clip off the edges of your beard. Does everybody do that one too? If you're going to use Leviticus 19:28 to outlaw tattoos, you might want to outlaw everything that the Torah forbids, right? There's all kinds of things you can't do. So I don't think that's the place to start with that issue. I think you need to start with, when Paul talks about conscience, the issue of conscience, we have the freedom to make choices. One person's conscience may say it's okay to get a tattoo because the Bible doesn't explicitly say anything in the New Testament about it. But One person may say that, I think it's fine to get a tattoo. My conscience says it's fine. Another person says my conscience is violated. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 6:12, everything is permissible with me, not everything is beneficial. So I personally have no interest in tattoos, never wanted one, never will get one. I don't need to express myself through a tattoo. There's nothing about my body I need to put on it to express myself. Some people see the need to do that. I don't care, but I don't obviously think that, if you think when I see someone that has 100 tattoos on them, it's like, or just their whole body is tattooed, I'm personally saying to myself, that person really needs to express themselves. This is something about their identity. They really need to express themselves. It's pretty obvious. So might tattoos be permissible? Maybe. I'm not fully convinced they're beneficial, but I'm not going to make a big deal of it. But I would say that it's going to be an issue of conscience as far as the Christian goes. I think, and we're not supposed to judge each other on that issue. Some people's conscience may say it's fine. Other people's conscience may say it's not fine. But I don't think the Leviticus text could be used. Because if you're going to use that text, you're going to have to start going through all kinds of texts in the Torah. And half of those texts are not applicable to today. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. Okay, and it certainly isn't repeated in the New Testament. That text is not repeated in the New Testament anywhere. If it had been re-emphasized in the New Testament, I might seriously give it a serious hearing, like honor your father and mother is repeated, do not covet's repeated, some other commandments are repeated, but not that one. Okay, that's my views on that, and I don't know whether you really care or not, but I thought I would just mention that. So that is that, and we are done.